Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this important topic. Please let us know in the comments where you're joining us from. My name is Dina Mitchell, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Realize Foundation. And our mission is to reduce suicide statistics across humanity. In October 2020, we launched the Save a Life Challenge, which is all about having the conversation. Our theory, instead of targeting only the humans struggling with ideation, is we spread awareness and education to all humans. So when the person struggling is ready to have the conversation, there are people around them that will understand how to listen and be supportive. In turn, we can stop the stigma. This will cause people to get help when they need it and ultimately reduce the suicide statistics. You can learn more at our website at realizefoundation.org or just search hashtag SaveALifeChallenge. So this month of June 2021, we are focusing on the first responder community. We are aware how hard the last 18 months have been. So today we are welcoming back Bil Gardiner, who is also one of our board members, to talk to us about his own story as a first responder. So Bill, can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Sure thing, Dina. I'm a photographer by trade. Grew up being a photographer and did that most of my life before college. And unfortunately, wasn't allowed to go to college for photography. My mom didn't think that it was a worthwhile pursuit financially, and all those other things that go with that. And so, I majored in a whole bunch of different things that didn't really give me a degree of purpose. And so when I got home, I found that I couldn't find work, and I was overqualified for this job, underqualified for that job. And so I got involved in retail, did that for a while. And while doing that, ran into a state trooper who worked in our area. And through the audiovisual store that I worked for, he had come in to get some work done on a cell phone install in his cruiser. And so while hanging out, he said, what are you doing with your life? And I said, you're pretty much looking at it. And he said, well, have you ever thought about a career in law enforcement? I said, well, yeah, like every boy does. It's police officer, firefighter, astronaut, usually one of those three. And but everybody I knew who was in law enforcement was a son, a nephew, a brother of a cop. So I figured you had to have an in. And he's like, oh, no, you take the test. I'm like, oh, what test? He said, well, the civil service exam for municipal police and the state police exam for the Massachusetts State Police. And so I just kept checking the want ads for those postings, and eventually took both tests, crushing them. I got a 98 in the civil service exam and a 95 in the state police exam, and eventually ended up spending 2 years as a campus police officer at Worcester Polytechnic Institute in the city of Worcester, and then joined the Worcester Police Department 2 years later. And so that was a culture shock for me, to say the least, because I like to use my head and use my heart and use the law to solve problems. And it became immediately clear, even in just the academy, based on answering questions for exams and getting into conversations with other cadets about, what did you get on this one and what did you get on that one? And the conversation would always come around to, well, I thought there was one answer for this question, and a bunch of other folks that think there was another answer. And so, oh, we're the police, we can do anything we want to do. And that just ended up being, well, no, you can't. You have to follow this law or that law or this, whatever, with this policy or procedure. And as it turned out, I was always right. There was one question in particular on one test where they were going to throw it out because they had actually made a mistake in creating it. Anybody who's old enough to remember the old Duquesne machines that you put that carbon paper around to print tests, the papers overlapped, and so part of the fact pattern disappeared. And I'm reading this fact pattern, and all of a sudden jumped from me being in an alley looking at a broken into truck to me traveling down and driving in my cruiser and seeing two people carrying a box that we find out came from that truck. Do I have the right to arrest? Well, everybody said they had the right to arrest. And I'm like, well, no, you can't. short of um, fresh and continued sight of that person taking something from the van and walking down the street with it, all I had was a person in possession of stolen property. And so I pretty much wrote that into the margins of this test, saying there's just something about this question that doesn't make any sense. And I just, I do not feel I have a right to arrest. There is no felony. At the most, I have possession of stolen property, and that was it. And so the supervisor came in the room and basically, when they got to that question, said, "We're going to throw this question out." But one cadet in particular realized that there was something wrong with the question, rationalized it, and wrote in a reason for the decision that they made. And we decided to keep it in. And that cadet was Bil Gardiner. And all of a sudden, from the back of the room, you heard "effing know-it-all." And so, that followed me the rest of the time in the police academy. And by the time I graduated and got on the street, there were actually officers on the street who didn't like me and didn't trust me because they didn't feel that I would back them up on a call when they were doing something that was maybe inappropriate. And, I wasn't a go along to get along police officer. And I don't believe that I should have been. And that just turned into instantly me being blackballed and pushed around and put down and name called, and just the behavior by my fellow officers and supervisors in the department was just horrendous. I was passed over for positions and transfers. I was constantly stuck in corners of the city where nothing happened, so that I wasn't, assisting other officers in the busier parts of the city. So I wasn't learning a lot. You tend to learn as you earn when you're on the job. If you go to a really involved call, or a violent call, or a call in a region in the city that's just very, very crime ridden, that's how you learn, and how you learn the job, you learn how to work and deal with people. And I wasn't getting that, because all I was doing was answering alarm calls in the hither regions of our city. And so eventually, 4 or 5 years of this behavior and nasty just reactions and responses from other officers, people walking by, you say, "Hey, what's going on?" And they'd grunt at you or whatever, if they even spoke to you. So, 4 or 5 years into it, I was just, broken. There were times where my 2 days off, we'd work 4 days on and 2 days off. So your days off would rotate every week. And I just was on the couch for 48 hours, eating, sleeping on the couch, watching TV, going back to work again. And when I went back to work every morning, before I got, even out of the house, diarrhea twice every morning before I left the house, anxiety and just stomach aches, and, just what the doctors are, maybe you have irritable bowel syndromes. Like, "Nah, I don't think so." And they did all these tests, and sure enough, they said, "Yeah, we don't think so either." And, it just began this, what's now been a little over 20 years of daily anxiety and depression. And so, never mind the serious calls that I had been on over time. I don't know that I ever had anything that would necessarily wake me up at night. I never really had any serious trauma calls. Quite a few having to check and investigate a sudden death or things like that, but nothing too extreme. One major pursuit, 120-mile-an-hour pursuit through a couple of different counties to recapture an escaped prisoner. And, but that, most of that stuff I just kind of brushed off, and it's just, it's part of the job. So I don't know that even the job weighed so heavily on me as much as the treatment that I received. And so it's taken a lot out of me. And, I'll be honest, just let people know that while I've never, had a plan to, do harm to myself or to kill myself or anything like that. But there are days where I just wish I wasn't alive. And this past 4 to 6 weeks has been very, very, heavy in that way. I've just been struggling a lot because of a bunch of things and the way I've been treated by people in a couple of arenas I've been working in to try to create change in police reform and try to create change around racism and doing things like that. And there are just so many ignorant people out there that just don't get and understand how to treat people. And then on top of it, with what I deal with, that just sends me down this rabbit hole that if anybody who's listening and suffers from similar things will maybe understand that when you don't get support and you're starting to hurt and it continues to just spiral downwards, you just don't there are times you just find it hard to even lift your head up off the pillow every day, much less do any of the other things that you're supposed to do. And so that for me is just a daily activity. There are things that will get rid of it. If I jump on the Harley and go for a ride, and go across a couple of states, and this last weekend it was iced coffee and ice cream. That's the only thing I did all day, and it was really, really great. And by the time I was done, I felt really good. But it's not long thereafter that kind of goes away and that euphoria disappears, and I'm right back where I started again. So that's kind of what I've been dealing with the last 20 years. I've been retired now for 17 years. I usually use I'm just going to say I got screwed out of my full disability retirement after going to a state medical panel that pretty much determined that I couldn't do the job anymore. It wasn't reversible, and it was the job's fault. The city disagreed, and they attempted to fire me. They did fire me. And the union lawyer said, well, what we'll do is we will threaten them with arbitration, because if you got 8 out of 9 prongs from a medical board in the affirmative, there's no way a judge isn't going to give you your retirement, and we'll see what they do. And sure enough, he threatened them with the arbitration, and they said, oh, okay, we'll rehire him. We'll give him sick time through his 10-year date, because I was right at the border of 10 years. And, we'll let him retire on his own on a 25% disability. Which is what you'd get if you just retire on your own on a medical. The state would award you normally 72%. And the union lawyer said, we'll go that way. And I said, well, you know what? I don't know. Why don't we go to the judge? Why don't we, let him arbitrate? And, if he's going to give it to me anyway, well, you should take this, because if you don't, you might not get anything at all. And of course, I shouldn't have listened to him, because that's actually not true. And sure enough, I signed the paperwork. I retired on 25%. The union lawyer then says, okay, no, we've got you 25%. Now we can fight for your full disability retirement. But now you're no longer a member of the bargaining unit, the union, so you have to pay me out of pocket. And he wanted like a $2,500 retainer to begin with. And I didn't have $2,500. So needless to say, 17 years later, I still only make 25%, basically $1,000 a month. And so I wonder often, what's going to happen to me in 20 years, 30 years, when I am no longer able to work, and you can't live on $1,000 a month. It's just not possible. And so that just weighs heavily on my mind all the time. And so those things together just, again, send me down a rabbit hole that's just, it's hard to deal with. And the things that bring me out of it, I'm not getting enough of in a row to, take these things away. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. And I guess I'll just stop there to see if you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that, Bill. I know that's not easy to talk about, and probably, I know that it's kind of equates to kids who are bullied in school, in my mind, from what you said. And it's not okay for people to be bullies. It's just not okay. And I think that sometimes there are people who do the bullying who have their own stuff that is their insecurities that make them act that way as well. So I think it's almost like sometimes they need help just as much as we do. And I'm not dismissing how they treated you at all. I didn't mean it that way. I just mean that sometimes people act out because of their own insecurities in their own stuff. So I also wanted to ask you about hold that thought. I lost it. Um,
Happens to me all the time.
anyway, I just can't remember. So I'll think of something else. Um, I think that your story is incredible in the sense that I've never heard I've never heard a story like that from a police officer or a first responder. And I think that that's part of the problem is that we're not talking about it. We're not having the conversation just like we're talking about here for suicide prevention. And it's like, if we don't talk about these things, they're never going to change and they're never going to get better. And I think there's good and bad in everything in the world. And, I've always believed in the people protecting us in the police department, the fire and the EMS. And I trust them because that's how I was brought up. And I know there's a lot of controversy in our world about this right now. And I just want to make it known we're not here to feed into the controversy. We're here to talk about an honest situation and tell the truth about it and how can we fix it. And so if you have any ideas to contribute to that, maybe that would help someone else, what would you say?
Um, well, the first responder services, police, especially fire next, and then the medical corps, paramedics and EMTs. It's usually a very they're careers that are very much filled with bravado, and I have to be tough and I have to be a superhero to do these jobs. And so, when you are suffering from anything, it's usually looked at as being you're usually looked at as being weak for speaking up. So that just causes a lot of people to just keep those things inside and not discuss them at all. I'm not that way, and luckily, I mean, I wear my heart on my sleeve. It's just, and luckily, I had one of my coworkers who was in the domestic violence unit with me come to my office one day and just let me know. I mean, she could see what was going on. She could see what was happening to me because we never talked about it. And she just walked into my office one day and said, "Listen, if you need help, um, there's no shame in asking for it." And she just didn't say much more than that, and just said that maybe I should, reach out and see what I can do for myself. And that started me on the path of talking to a therapist, which has been going on now. What were we, 21? So this is about 21 years now. It was around the end of '99, the beginning of 2000 that I reached out and started seeing a therapist, and pretty much have been seeing a therapist anywhere from every week to once a month for the last 21 years. And so, that's only one answer. Having talk therapy is one way to go. There are other things that once you start to do therapy that you're able to get into, whether it be tapping and EMDR and going back and reliving traumas that you've had in a safe environment where they can kind of bring you through it and show you that it wasn't as necessarily dangerous, or it's over now, so don't, let's not worry about it anymore. And so there's all these different things that you can do. There's all kinds of help out there, and I guess the thing to do is to ask for that help. And it's find anyone who you trust that you can talk to, and just say, I need help, and maybe you can help me or assist me in finding this help. And if you can just get that one person to help you out, that often makes it a lot easier. But at the end of the day, whatever it is, it can be low level, medium level. At the end of the day, you don't know if you can make it another minute. Stop, pick up a phone, ring somebody's doorbell, tap somebody in the shoulder and say, listen, I need help. Can you help me? And, you know, take it from there. But that's what comes to mind immediately when you ask that question.
Okay. I also want to just bring up what you said on our conversation last week with James, and that was about, if you have a spouse that is a first responder or a family member and they're, something's different, like they're not taking out the trash when they usually do, or they're not doing menial chores or things that normally they would do, that might be a sign that something's going on and you should ask them. And I think that, you know, it's still all about having the conversation and communication. It's still all about asking people if they're okay, and how James said, like, it's okay to ask people if they're going to hurt themselves or they're planning to hurt themselves, because I've actually done a little more research about that since last week, and it actually helps. It actually decreases the chance of them harming themselves if you ask them straight up. And I think it's because then they feel accountable. And I can speak that from my own journey. It's like, if someone knows something, it makes me more accountable to it if I'm not the only one who knows, if that makes sense. um but it's like, if you can explain to somebody around you that cares about you what your bad days look like when you're having a good day, and you can talk about it, then when you do have a bad day, those people know how to help you and how to be there for you. And sometimes it's just to listen, or it could be that, hey, I need you to go on a Harley ride with me, or it could be music, or it could be just going to the park and going for a walk. It could be lots of things. I think when people talk about suicide and ideation, sometimes people don't know what to say. They don't know how to respond, and they don't want to say the wrong thing, so they just say nothing. And that's the worst thing they can do. Is that all you have to do is offer your support, say you'll be there, say you'll listen, go for a walk with somebody, and that's all it takes to be there for them. So I just wanted people to understand that if you haven't experienced this yourself, like, try to understand what people are feeling and what they're going through and what would help them the most, so you can be of help to your family or friend or loved one. So
Yeah, most definitely. It doesn't hurt to ask, and it's just ask the person what's going on. When they tell you, I think two of the easiest things that you can ever say is, "I'm very sorry that happened to you," and then, "What can I do for you?" And if you just do those two things, it doesn't take any effort, it doesn't take any special counseling or schooling to do that. That's literally all you have to do. And a lot of times, I know, for me, it's sometimes just an acknowledgement that somebody at least is listening, cares, and has an open ear, and is willing to help. And sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes you need a lot more than that, but it's at least a step in the right direction.
yeah, I mean, just the act of kindness of holding a door open for someone, or saying hello, or saying how are you, and that could be, you know, a clerk stocking the shelves at the grocery store, or it could be anybody you come in contact with. Just a kind hello sometimes makes a huge difference to somebody who is in that space. And so thank you for bringing that up, and I really appreciate you sharing your story, Bill.
Thank you.
Well, everybody, thank you for being here and listening. And you can reach out to either one of us if you have any questions, or you just need someone to listen or support. And we understand this past year and a half has been really hard on everybody, especially first responders. And we don't have the people around us that we normally can hug and hang out with. We've had separation and isolation, and it's not good for us. So we need to be having these conversations, you need to reach out to those close to you and talk to them. So with that said, you can follow us on this page or YouTube for more live conversations and discussions, and we will have a different topic each month. So this month we're obviously talking about first responders. Next month we will be talking about youth and parents, and then August we'll be talking about loss survivors. So if you have a story or would like to be interviewed on our channel, please reach out to me and let me know. Otherwise, you can find us at realizefoundation.org or Google hashtag SaveALifeChallenge. We hope you will subscribe and follow us, and we also hope that you would donate if you're able. And remember that the Save a Life Challenge is all about having the conversation. So we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.